mask when leaving the house. 3. Wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds using our Deck soap. 4. Cover your nose and mouth with a disposable tissue or flex elbow when you cough or sneeze. Choose Deck soap for that extra cleanliness. Deck soap is affordable and available nationwide.
It is 13 hours 35 in Guyana, and it's time for COVID-19 and Elections Watch. This afternoon at the helm of the program, as usual, senior journalist of Kaiser News, Mr. Leonard Gildarie, all decked in blue alongside his co-host, Dr. Yog Mahadeo, in the matching color. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. Not a blade of grass. And that message is not only for my colleagues in the radio station here, but also to anybody who would want to take away our country, split it in parts, and say it belongs to them. So today we're gonna fight for that. Today, are you in a fighting mood, Yog?
Um, Depending where you have to fight for a country, always, forever.
Very good, and I think we're on the same page with that, and I think we join in thousands of Guyanese, hundreds of thousands of Guyanese who have come on board, who've been very, very passionate, and they're saying that we're not gonna be allowing anybody to take away what rightfully belongs to us. So we before the International Court of Justice today to argue that case, jurisdiction case, before it goes on to the real meat of the matter when it comes to the borders that Venezuela, our neighboring Venezuela, whom we have such a good relationship with. The people of Venezuela, very, very warm people, but the administration wants to take away our borders. But let's get right down into it. I want to say hello. Um, I want to say hello to all of our good people right across this beautiful land of ours, from across the coastlands, and to our people who've been with us day in, day out throughout this entire period. Yog, it would be 4 months today, according to my count, 120 days if you're using 30 days per month, since the elections of March the 2nd. And we've been praying, and we've been asking that this thing get over with and done very quickly. Day in, day out, you and I have been doing that. And it seems to be, well, we have to be very optimistic about that. So I want to say welcome to our people who would have been joining us from abroad. Uh, I hope that your weather is not like ours. It's been a little wet over the last couple hours. Good for the farmers, for the others who want to get things done. It's hampers. But today we're going to get right down into the issues with regards to what is in the news before we get into our regular programming. But there's nothing regular today. So, Jog, before I do anything, I want to say welcome to you, my brother. How are you holding up there?
Very well, thanks. Feeling a little blue. And as a brother of mine, let me caution you, my brother. Be careful when you use numbers. You cannot say 120 days equals to 4 months. Remember, Guyana has a problem with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought I'd remind you, we have a problem with numbers, Leonard. So 120 days has to unfortunately remain 120 days.
Well, let me tell you something, Yog. We our job here is to uplift our people. And today, you know what I had? I had somebody bought a piece of pone for me. When last time you had pone?
Ah, well, it's that time now. It's with the curfew and with everything. I'm surprised somebody decide to come to you and bring that. But we
No,
have
it's
to
one of my colleagues.
investigate.
One of my
We
colleagues
gotta
at work.
invest. We gotta investigate what you and the Kevin and Joshua and everybody in Kaiju really really doing there.
No, no, but let me tell you what we're doing. I've not really seen them together for the last couple of days. Whenever month end comes on and they know that they owe us, they disappear. But jokes aside, it's a very serious day today. Jokes aside, it's June the 30th, 120 days, according to our count, since the March 2nd elections. And we are going to be talking a couple of things. We're going to talk about the case, that border case that has started in earnest today before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. It's a United Nations, it's a judicial arm of the United Nations, and we have taken our border case there because it's been hanging too long, according to President David Granger, around the necks of Guyanese. And this is one thing I must say that I think I really endorse from the coalition in a very big way. That aside, there's so many things about Venezuela that we could say. We have a very vibrant, I would say, trading going on with Venezuela, although it would have gone a little damp in the 2015-2016 period. But we're doing a lot of rice and gold and so with them cross border with fuel and so on. So it isn't that we have a problem with the people. In fact, we have thousands of them who would have come here and they have made Guyana home. There was a time years back when our people would have gone there to make a life. I think we are reciprocating right now. A truck broke down this morning on the Demerara Harbour Bridge, sending traffic backing up for miles, Yog, which is on the scoring what we've been talking about COVID-19. It seems as if those measures introduced by government, by the administration, by the authorities, the people are not paying attention. They're going about their business as normal. There's a developing story also when it comes to the army, when it comes to the army, when it comes to the police. Maxine Graham, Deputy Commissioner, Leslie James, Commissioner of Police. There seems to be some issues with why they're not on leave versus the need to send off the Army Chief on leave, accumulated leave. All three individuals. This is Patrick West, who's the Chief of Army, Leslie James, who's the Commissioner of Police, and Maxine Graham, who is a Deputy Commissioner of Police. All three would have reached the age of retirement or near to reach the age of retirement. In the case of Patrick West, and we're going to probably chat a little more about that, he has some accumulated leave. He's been sent on leave. Maxine Graham, Leslie James, accumulated leave, not sent on leave. So we're going to come back to that. There is a developing story also with Carl Greenidge, former Foreign Affairs Minister of Guyana, and he is one of the persons very close to that case that is ongoing with the Venezuela case. And he is warning Guyana, be very careful when you talk up to our people, our regional people, overseas people, because these are the people we have a relationship with. Yog, you and I would have to come back and talk about that in a little while. So we head straight over to the front page of Kaito News, which we've been doing day in, day out. Yog, very important newspaper today in terms of news and its impact on Guyana. The headline, Granger agrees with Lowenfield's report. I'm not sure whether you agree with this particular agrees, but Granger would have had an interview yesterday, last evening, with a radio station and online radio station, and he would have says that he's backing Lowenfield's figure, those figures which would have given the coalition a win. This was after he would have minus discarded, dumped over 115,000 votes. And that is in high in contention, has angered many. He is hoping for a declaration by this weekend, and he says any talks about sanctions is not something that he agrees with or would endorse for his administration or for his people. Over the weekend, I think we would have done an interview with former President Donald Ramatario on room 592 right here on Kaito Radio. And he would have told, or he would have had a message for President David Granger. He says, go on the side of democracy and concede. He would have said that the day when he made the declaration, he moved right away. He packed his bag and he got out of the State House and he moved in back to his house. and he's saying that yes, you might not like what is happening, but you have to accept the results. Guyana is the seat of CARICOM, Harmon to ex-Bajan PM Owen Arthur, and you would have recalled Owen Arthur had some words for the coalition of Guyana, and he would have come under the ire of the coalition because he dared open his mouth. And all this you could find in the June the 30th edition, today's edition of Kaichur News. And we got on to some other headlines. Respect CCJ ruling on Recount. CARICOM private sector body tells Guyana's leaders Claudette Singh will not actively participate in CCJ elections. Appeal case. This is a case that is coming up tomorrow. Very important case. We are going to be streaming it live here on Kaichur Radio, so you could tune in on us. And that it was explained last evening by Anna Nandlal that she doesn't necessarily have to put any submissions in. Her submissions for the Court of Appeal, if you've been following the case, would still hold. So no big deal with that. Ocean View retrofit. There's a headline here: media not invited to see how, where, and what $1 billion being spent on. There was a walk through yesterday by officials, according to this report here, and the media was not invited. And there's that big headline on top of the page as well, talking about oil. Don't forget that things are happening while Rome is burning. Is that it, Yog?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
United Nations Human Rights Committee should hold Guyana to account on Exxon's flaring. This is transparency bodies. And Yoga and that story there that Greenwich underscores need for international protection. Let's get right into that. This is the Foreign Affairs Minister. His administration has taken a particular stance on CARICOM, on some regional leaders, former leaders, some of them in some cases, and they've criticized them. And he's saying, careful, careful, what are you treading? Let's get right down into it. There's some thoughts into that.
Well, I think Mr. Greenwich made some. I would encourage everyone to listen to Mr. Greenwich's uh, speech. It was kind of a little lengthy, but it is important we listen to it because he spoke quite well. And one would expect that given Mr. Greenwich's experience, long years of experience. As you know, in the discussion he had last night, Leonard, I basically believe he schooled those two young men, schooled them in an academic way into what this whole thing about, sovereignty. The gentleman has reminded everyone that you cannot be shouting to the world about sovereignty when you need the world, and he said even top persons in the country are calling out these foreign countries and foreign agencies, and we ought not to. So it is quite a good lesson that he imparted last night. Mind you, Greenwich is still a representative of APNU AFC, and he was speaking to APNU AFC frontliners or hardliners, I would say. These are the same people who have, over the last week, threatened people like Maya Motley and so forth. So we gotta take that into consideration that indeed, if one were to ignore the politics of the day, listen to Greenwich's talk about sovereignty and the whole, not just the sovereignty part. I mean, that was the ending of his interview, but his entire interview with regards to the International Court of Justice is the case, the border issue with Venezuela. And when you want, we can probably get into a brief little discussion about the presentations made today, Leonard.
Yes, absolutely, the Yog. And I think that is the big case. What is Venezuela asking? What is the history in this? There was an award. They had the different countries would have had issues going back years, more than a decade back. And when we went to the independence in the 1960s, I think it was, right? I think Guyana wanted
Hmm.
to come out from Britain's rule, and so Venezuela, there were issues over that border. So I want to hand it right over to you, so maybe we could trace it back and the importance of this case, because we could recall, Yog, in 2015, immediately after there was an announcement of oil being found, discovered in our waters, Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro, President Nicolas Maduro, immediately drew some maps which projects the entire, I think it's the entire Essequibo coast, even parts of Region 3, I think it was,
Mm.
that show that they own even the waters where we discovered oil, about 100 miles off the shores of Guyana, off Stabroek here. And they're saying we even own that. You're going to see how they did it. They project it outwards and
Mm.
include all that area there. So Guyana went right away. But I pass it over to you because I think you understand
Yeah.
it too.
It's to put it in a nutshell. Remember, Guyana would have gotten, all of this demarcation and border issues settled since 1800s. 1899 would have been the arbitral award. We got to remember that during those years and up to recently, even geopolitics is extremely important in the international scene. And so, in those days, there has been discussion between British Guyana, between the Dutch for Berbice and for Demerara and Essequibo. It is good to read those histories, and one would have to keep in mind that then what would have been called, I believe, the United States of Venezuela in English, of course, um, they would have presented their issues. And so, anyway, to cut it short, the border between Guyana and Venezuela would have been clarified, would have been worked out. Now, all of that happened in the early 1900s. 60 years passed. You did not hear a peep from Venezuela. After 60 years, then suddenly Venezuela, somebody there, well, it is claimed that one of the persons who would have been part of um, the arbitration team.
Hmm.
He died, and posthumously, a letter purportedly written by him to say that the arbitration and the award and so forth was not above board and it was under pressure from the Russians. Yes, same kinds of things, right?
Hmm.
And so what was what was coincidental about the whole thing is that Venezuela started to reassert itself when Guyana was going to get into the discussions for its independence, 1965 thereabouts. And so from then on, Venezuela kept beating its chest about this part of two-thirds of Guyana.
Hmm.
Now, as far as we're concerned, and as far as, I mean, if you talk to any of the law and history students, history teaches us and law teaches us as well that generally, country, you live for 50, 60, 100 years under particular board and under particular government and governance. It is deemed to be so. It is deemed to be so. And so it was interesting to listen to the presentations by the three wise men at the International Court today. And I must say, hats off to, I think Sir Sridhar Rampal is now 92 years old.
Sharp. He's
Um,
sharp. He's sharp.
yeah, but he was leading the presentation and he spoke quite powerfully on the issues. And his two other colleagues, they spoke well. I think Guyana was well represented today, and we will now have to see where it goes from here. Remember, Venezuela has decided not to participate,
Hmm.
and I think Venezuela also has said that the International Court ICJ does not have jurisdiction. But Sir Sridhar would have argued that the ICJ does have the kind of jurisdiction to hear this matter. So it would be interesting to see, how things unfold within the next 30 days or so. According to Greenwich, it takes about 30 days thereabouts for things to come to a point where some decision or some advisory can be issued.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely, Yoga. And so I think we're going to be joined for a few minutes here by Deodat Indar, a private sector official as well as a candidate for the People's Progressive Party. And I want to say welcome to Mr. Indar. Mr. Indar, you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you
Very
clearly.
good.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, very, very clear. So we wanted to really touch base with you a couple of things. One of the things that we have been paying very close attention to is the business sector, the private sector, which I know that you were part of, and of course some other areas that very quickly. I know that you're a very busy man. But let us talk. I'm here with Dr. Yog Mahadeo, my co-host. You were a former president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. You're past vice president of the vice chairman of the Private Sector Commission and a chartered accountant, and of course a national candidate for the People's Progressive Party. Sir, I want to ask you about the COVID-19 situation and the economy. Could you tell us, based on what you're seeing, what is it that you could tell the people of Guyana?
So, thank you very much for having me, Yoga and Leonard, and to your listeners and viewers in Guyana, the region, as well as those that tune in for the field. So, let's start with the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 18th, there was a closure of the airspace in Guyana, and there was partial lockdown of businesses. Uh, Business from then to now has furloughed thousands of workers. Those workers, they have not gone back into any employment so far. Businesses, especially those in the hospitality sector, construction sector, mining sector, wholesale and retail, because they are not getting to open as they would like to, um, they have suffered tremendous amount of loss in their business. As I don't know if you saw this morning, a report coming out that Liat is going to close their operations.
Yes.
Right? So that is just one of the many. It's just a tip of the iceberg. For example, the manufacturers did a survey recently, and they will tell you that over 50% of manufacturers have reduced their operations. About 17% of them are not even doing any work.
Hmm.
When you come to the retailers, you just take a walk down the street in Georgetown and you'll see the places are closed. In the nights, if you look around, all the entire hospitality sector is suffering.
Hmm.
Nobody's opening because obviously there's a lockdown on the economy and people are suffering. And the government of the day has not done anything for them. I'm sorry, Leonard, they have not done anything. Um, when we went out as a candidate for the PPP, we went out to share hampers and masks. Um, when we went out there, we heard the stories and we saw the plight of the people. People are starving. They are starving. And here you have an election fiasco. I call it election purgatory. It's not seem to find an end.
Hmm.
And every time you think you're at an end, something comes and just like a bomb in the middle of it, and it goes into another different direction. So you have a country that is suffering anybody,
Hmm.
right? You have a country. I mean, I haven't gone to the macro. I have not even gone to the macroeconomic side of it as yet. If you look at the Bank of Guyana, there's a $93 billion in overdraft there. That is represent about 40% of the net assets of the Bank of Guyana. There's no gold there. All of the monies in all of these semi-autonomous agencies are gone. Forestry, Central Housing and Planning Authority, all those agencies that don't have money. Look at Guy Suku. Guy Suku is one of the biggest employer of people in this country. Apart from the ones that they shut down, look at what's happening now. They didn't have money to pay their people about a week ago. They said they can't pay the workers. Up to now, those workers are not paid. So you can understand with the intermixing of all of these different problems from the various sectors. It's a bomb waiting to go off in this economy. We are at a place where we are bankrupt,
Hmm.
right?
Do we have any idea, sir, at this point in time, whether how bad the situation is when it comes to the workers who've been laid up? Do we have any figures as to the number of persons or so?
You don't have the figures because what happened is that those numbers normally come out late out of the Bank of Guyana. They normally have a lag of months behind. But what you do as an economics person, you go on the ground and you see and you observe.
Uh-huh.
If you go and you talk to the speedboat people them in Perica or in Ridenhoop, and you ask them how many trips they used to make before all of this happened, they will tell you, and they will tell you how much they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's slashed by half. If you go on the street where the market vendors are and you ask them how much hours you have to sell, how much you're turning over, they'll tell you they're running on bearings.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to any wholesaler of clothing, they can't even open. The clothing stores cannot open.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to any retailer for the small shops for goods and services, the stories are the same sector by sector. So it is only a matter for those numbers to come out. But the numbers, when they come out, Leonard, you would agree they are lagging indicators.
Mm-hmm.
They lag. You have to get the leading indicators, which is these observation on the ground that you go and you systematically check each aspect of the economy. If you look at construction, if you drive around, just do a normal thing and drive around and see how many people are doing construction. And you can count them in the palm of your hands. So that affects a long tail of economic activity, from the transportation side to the worker side to the draftsman them to permitting side to down to the house cart man on the street. So this thing is having
Mm-hmm.
an impact on everybody.
Right, right, right. One of the areas, sir, that I would want to pay special attention to, and I know that as a former executive of the private sector and, of course, the GCCI, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, is how banks and the customers, let's say the businesses, how the amount of money they would be owing and the pressure that they're under. Could you comment a little on that? Do we have any ideas what is happening there?
Yeah. So
Loans,
if the
mortgages,
numbers,
etc.
the numbers, and they're not official numbers, but I've been speaking to some of the bankers. Some of the banks claiming as a 25%. So when the deposits are down by 25%, it means that economic activity is down by that, because people normally take the money to bank it because they have to cut their checks to pay their suppliers anyhow. So
Right.
they have to have money in the bank account,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, it is understood that once you have a steep drop in economic activity, people will not be able to pay their car loans, their house loans, their business loans, and so on. The banks have extended some level of flexibility when it comes to that. But at the end of the day, you still have to pay your debt, and
Mm-hmm.
people are struggling for it. Now, prior to the pandemic, the loans, we call the bad loans, or the questionable loans, or what they call the provision that you will normally have to put into your bank's balance sheet, normally across all of the commercial banks is around 13.12%. That was prior to all of this slowdown in activity. So the only logical um, reference to take from that is that it will get worse,
Mm-hmm.
because during this pandemic, uh, it affected all industries except those that are in the medical industry and some other small spin-off subsectors that have to engage in the pandemic to help people medically and so on.
Mm-hmm. And do we have any idea at this point in time how much of an impact this entire situation would have had on the our foreign exchange, U.S. dollars, exchange rates, and so on?
Well, you know, if you look at the Bank of Guyana, you'll see they have around 2.5 to 3 months import cover. Normally, the international financial institution like the IMF, they will recommend and suggest that all countries have at least about three months of import cover. We are
Mm-hmm.
below that. The reason being is because some of the most uh, revenue earners for foreign exchange, like guys Suku, in the forestry sector, they used to export a lot of wood and so on, fish and shrimp and so on. Those exports have been slashed significantly, especially when it comes to Gaisuku. Gaisuku used to bring in close to about 88 to 90 million US per annum.
Mm-hmm.
That is not so anymore. So that has impacted on the incoming foreign currency. But at the same time, you have relatively the same or maybe below the amount of imports that you're paying for, because we still need all of the imported goods that we consume on the supermarket shelf. We still wear imported shorts and pants, and we still drive our vehicle. We still got to pay for fuel. So all those things take U.S. currencies to procure. So we keep driving the reserves further down and further down. Right
Hmm.
now, it's about 500 and something million, if I'm not correct, the last report I saw
Right, right,
at the
right.
bank. Yeah.
Well, I know that.
But just to mention one thing, the cash market is for a US dollar now is about 204 to $344 to one. But
Mhm.
if you go to the bank, you get the wire market is about 216, 216 and a half, 217 at the commercial bank. So there is a vast disparity between the rate at the central bank, the commercial banks, and the rate at the cambios.
Mhm. Mhm. So I thank you very much for that. Very quickly, Yog, any questions that you may have for Mr. Indar? I think Yog is now back with us. You hear
Yeah,
us, Yog?
sorry about that. No,
Yes.
no, no questions. I know we now have to wait and see what the next couple of days going to bring to us. Tomorrow is a big day, so I mean, it's good, and we need to continue the conversation about the economy. It is not going anywhere quickly. Um, one would want to consider that if APNU AFC, that if APNU AFC is fighting so hard to stay in government, why would they fight if the economy is bankrupt? Why would they? What's the incentive then?
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, let me answer that. It depends on what their view of government is. If their view of government is to enrich the people of the country or enrich themselves, I'm sorry to be so negative when it comes to that, because here you are, 120 days after an election, and on the 16th of June, the chair of GCOM directed the CEO to go and prepare a report about valid votes cast, which he had 10 certificates. He came back with a report that totally doesn't resemble anything that was in the ballot box or anything that we saw at the recount, right? That eventually was challenged by a person called Eslin David that now put this thing to the CCJ. All of these shenanigans, and as the CARICOM leader called gamesmanship, all of these things are only adding to the demise of the Guyanese people. We are the laughing stock now of the Caribbean and the rest of the world when people see how we are behaving. There's a clear winner here, Yog. There's a clear winner and there's a clear loser here. Just that the losers don't want to give up power, right? The country is bankrupt, just like when Jagan took it over in 1992. It is bankrupt then, and he took it, and we come from a heavily indebted poor country, and as at only of recent we were upper middle income country. Now, look back at our debt. The debt continues to climb,
But
right?
but but one still has to question, right? So from a logical perspective, if APNU AFC is doing everything it is doing to stay in power, and as you were proposing that maybe one of the reasons is for self enrichment. But there is nothing to enrich yourself with anymore. There is a 90 odd billion dollars hole. We don't have anything to sell. We don't have anything to export anymore. The oil money will be held up. So why hold on to power then over a zero economy, a tanked economy?
Well, that's a question for the outgoing Minister of Finance, Jordan. But I disagree with you, because only recently, the Kaichor News, this is the radio element, but the Kaichor newspaper published that contracts are still being doled out for hundreds of millions of dollars. Land, acreage after acreage of prime land with asset values that have skyrocketed, have been given out to friends and family and companies that we don't even know their names. They're not Guyanese companies, right? So the country have a lot of resources. The oil money, as you rightly put, it is in the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, but that money has not been freezed by anyone as yet, or is under duress or anything. The money is there. It's Guyana's property at this point, right? So there is, if you look at the cash flows for Guyana from the oil sector going forward, and once we rejuvenate the other we're called job intensive sectors like agriculture and so on, The revenues from those or the benefits deriving from those sectors, will give a very prosperous Guyana, but you need the management of it. Now, look what these guys have done in 5 years. Can you point to anything that they have given anybody? Well, I will answer that for you. Every year, they take $91 billion more in taxes than the PPP regime did. The PPP regime, the last year is about $135 billion in taxes they rake in. As of last year, it was $91 billion. I think it's $226 billion they brought in taxes. So they have taken away from the poor man. They have pushed both hands in the pockets of poor people. So I'm saying to you, if they are fighting to continue to do that to the Guyanese people, that is why people voted them out. Long and short of it, that is why people voted them out, because they felt the hardship. They were taking more than they were giving.
And I want to bring you to the other issue with the Court of Appeal decision and the Lowenfield report and the Caribbean Court of Justice case. What is some of your outlook on that?
Well, the court of appeal decision. I saw you had the legal luminaries on your show over the past couple of weeks, but the court of appeal, they did not have any jurisdiction, in our view, any jurisdiction to hear this matter. That is an election petition disguised as an application for an interpretation, right? That application by Eston David had in it all of the ingredients that the election petition has in it, right? So, sorry, I missed you there. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So right now, the CCJ, the matter is before the CCJ. What is expected out of that are orders to deal with jurisdiction. It does not have anything to do with the number of votes cast at that March. It does not change the number that was established at the recount of 233,336 persons voted for the PPP and 217,920 voted for APNU. The CCJ will not rule or order anything with respect to those, right? The other issue here with the Court of Appeal that is alarming is that they have two justices that decided to put in a word called valid into their interpretation that even the Constitution does not have it inside. And we all know for you to put words into the Constitution, there's a legal process to do that. You just don't interpret and stick in words here or there. It's a dangerous thing when you're doing that. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, the section in which they had to invoke for the Court of Appeal to listen to this case has a very narrow compass. Mm-hmm. It can only listen to specific issues concerning the qualification of a president. Now, you're listening to the qualification of a president. You're hearing a matter, and the president in this election have not yet been fully declared as yet by the chair of GCOP. Mm-hmm. So you're putting the cart before the horse, in other words. So we have a fundamental problem that right now, because the Court of Appeal had heard this matter, it put our laws in great exposure. Any busybody now can go and challenge the qualifications of a president. So we need to fix these things as a nation. If you look at it from a 30,000-degree viewpoint, our laws should not be misused in the ways in which it was misused over this period. From 2018, since a no confidence motion, the laws have been actually used to break laws. So you're using laws to break laws. The courts have been used and weaponized against actually the own citizens of this country, because the will of the people was expressed in an election, and you're using the court as a weapon against the will of the people as they expressed it on March 2nd. Mm-hmm. And that is a problem. As a country, we got to fix those things. You can't leave them under.
And in closing, Mr. Indar, election results and international pressure, could you tell us what are some of your thoughts with regards to whether we have messed with our opportunities, with our relations with international partners and donors?
I believe, Leonard, is that we have destroyed a lot of goodwill that we have that we have built up since the Republic of Guyana. Guyanese people are known for hospitality. We are known to be hardworking people, and obviously we are very honest people.
Hmm.
When we start to cuss our leaders in the Caribbean and the international community, an organization that have global respect, when we start to do that, like the OAS and the Carter Center and the Commonwealth and a whole host of other organizations that were part of the election observership, every time someone comes out and speak the truth about what they saw and observed, they're being attacked by um, persons from the APNU on very vile attacks down to the local. We have a British High Commission here, very respectable man. He was attacked by one of the APNU operative. How can we now attack these people and we want help? We go and we run to them. We wanted money to help with fighting COVID-19. We went and asked the World Bank for 5 million US loan. We are fighting a case next door with a howling dictator, Mr. Maduro. We will need international help if he decides not to comply with the ruling of the international court. I think Mr. Greenwich said it nicely. You can't want to disrespect these people to some extent and then ask for the help after. I mean, the money that you have in your pocket is printed in Canada. The ballot, the ballot, the statement of polls that we use in the election was printed in Canada. Most of the gardening goods, or we call it fresh market produce we produce in this country, they show up in the United States on Liberty Avenue, right? How it gets there, we have to trade. Those relationships mean something to us, and
Hmm.
we cannot keep destroying it as we go along for scant political reasons. You cannot do that. It destroys us as a country, because at the end of this process, we still have to go and engage those countries. We still have to go and engage the citizens of those countries.
Yes, and I do thank you for that, Mr. Didat Indar. And he's no other than a former past president or a past president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, past vice chairman of the Private Sector Commission, chartered accountant, and a national candidate for the People's Progressive Party. Mr. Indar, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And of course, we'd want to engage you sometime along in the future with regards to our political situation and going forward the business situation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, York. Thank you very much, Leonard. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Leonard.
Welcome.
Bye bye. So, in the meantime, while we say goodbye to Mr. Deodat Indar, it's June the 30th, 120 days since the elections, the March the 2nd elections in Guyana. And in a very short while before we hit our lines to hear from our people with regards to what they have to say and what is affecting them, we tell you what is happening with regards to news. There was that International Court of Justice case this morning. They are arguing jurisdiction, whether the court has the jurisdiction to hear about the arbitral award that Guyana has taken that case with the Venezuela border controversy to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And that is the judicial arm of the United Nations. And so Guyana wants this matter settled once and for all. It is estimated it's going to take about 5 years or so, thereabouts. We are down maybe 1 or 2 years. What they're arguing right now is whether the court has a jurisdiction. Venezuela is not participating, says it will not participate. It wants to have, it prefers to have talks, preferably with Guyana, something that Guyana says that it's tired of, that has been doing so for almost 20, 30 years, 3 decades, and it prefer to have this matter settled. Venezuela is claiming almost the whole of Essequibo, as well as the waters which Guyana has drilled and has found oil. And so, Yog, there is a developing situation which we are paying close attention to in Trinidad. We've seen some videos surfacing of people blocking off streets, and there's some rioting. I think that is what I was told. Rioting happening in Trinidad and Tobago. We know we have a number of Trinidad companies, and we should be paying attention what is happening there. We've been using their expertise on oil as well as other help that we could get from them. So as that develops, we are going to tell you about that. What the police have been engaging gunmen as well as people has been blocking up the street there. Yog, before we head to the line, is there any particular issue that we should be discussing? Well, we know the issue with Carl Greenidge. Carl Greenidge is warning against Guyana's stance. And when we say Guyana's, we're talking about the coalition stance with regards to hard talking our partners, that is CARICOM, the Commonwealth, and other donor partners. We've been having some talks, some criticisms of them by the coalition, who see them as overreaching their authorities in Guyana with regards to elections 2020. Um, Over to you, Yog.
Yeah, Leonard, look, these elections has gotten to the point where we have to become extremely concerned. On the one hand, the APNO AFC people are shouting sovereignty. They don't want anybody to attack them. So remember, all of APNO AFC's um, warriors, so to speak, were on the front line shouting. I mean, Moses Nagabutu himself came out on a rabid attack against CARICOM and against the rest of the world, right? And what did Brain to do last night? Throw all of them under the bus and say, I respect my CARICOM colleagues. I respect them. But in saying he respect them, he immediately turned around and disrespected them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Leonard, the politics is at play while people in this country are starving. And I want to share something else with you. How many people in Guyana know that effective 1st of January 2017, this is 2020, effective 1st of January 2017, your property taxes have been arbitrarily increased by 10%.
In the city or all over the country?
In the city.
Mm-hmm.
The official gazette of 27th of June 2020 has found itself gazetted that property taxes for the city of Georgetown has increased 10% with effect 1st of January 2017. I mean, I don't know. People, they don't, people doesn't have a heart. I mean, in this year, when people are not working, when people are struggling to find money to buy food, you know, a mayor who says his office has endorsed a rigging of an election now does this.
Mm-hmm.
How can you positively evaluate whatever this government is doing? I don't know. This is another one that puts you at a loss for words sometimes, Leonard.
Yes, and it is indeed so, Yog. If you look at Carl Greenidge, you could say a lot of things about him. You could criticize his stance. You could probably go after him on a number of issues. But he's been wrong in the diplomatic circles for a little while. He's been in Africa, coming back here. He was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now he's helping with our case before the ICJ, the International Court of Justice in The Hague, on the Venezuela border issue. So when he talks, he say, "Hey, calm down, calm down, Gildarie. You cannot, you cannot talk up to our partners within CARICOM like that. This is something that we should be paying attention to." And he has a voice in this entire thing. He's saying to his colleagues, it is a very clear message. I think he even said before what I read there. You're not gonna like what I'm gonna say to you, Yog, but I have to say it. You're not gonna like what I have to say. I would advise you, do not walk this line. Do not talk to the people like that. We should be careful. They were partners. They were business partners. They were trading partners. But not only that, we sit as part of the CARICOM as well. But it's not only CARICOM. He's talking generally because he understands when all this is said and done, we still have to continue live. You quite rightfully said, where are we going to get the money from? We have to trade with these people. I think Deodatin not too long ago said that we have to sell our products We have to deal with other issues when it comes to the international community. We're sitting here, we might have to have voting going on. We might have to sanction a particular country. Are we going to be part of that? Do we want to see ourselves coming out of that? There's a very old saying, no man is an island. So where are we going to sit? Are we going to sell the sugar to ourselves? Where are we going to get the foreign currency?
Exactly.
How are you going to bring the cars into the country if you have no foreign currency? If the people freeze your money from the oil, how are you going to have access to it? Where are you going to get the money from? So we got to be very, very careful in when we open our mouths and we say things and we don't have an understanding because it sounds good. I'm flexing my muscles because I am a parliamentarian. I am a minister, and I could say that I don't want you interfering in my country because we're sovereign. The fact remains that we all part of these international treaties. I think you, Yog, would have spoken many times about this, about the treaties that we've signed on to.
Yes.
We would have had
Yes.
the European Union ambassador here, Mr. Pons, and he would have made it very, very clear when you sign these treaties here, like for the European Union, for you to have an arrangement with those people, whether it's trading and otherwise, you sign a treaty, and the treaty says that you have to adhere to certain expected behavior. If you don't adhere to that, then there's going to be repercussions, sanctions, among other things. These people made it very, very clear what sanctions mean. Gildarie want to travel to the U.S. You might very well see the U.S. telling Gildarie, "Hey, you involved in some things that is not so right. We're not going to allow you to travel. You have property over here. You have family over here. We're going to freeze it." So it starts personally those sanctions and so on. While we may not like the talk of it or the talks of it, rather, um, it is something that all over the world it has been done. And when you see these countries uncharacteristically come out and say to a peaceful nation like Guyana, these are something that you have to live with. You could rest assured it's something that you have to live with.
Correct. And Leonard, Carl Granite spoke quite at length about calling out foreign countries about their opinions. They have a right to have an opinion about Guyana, because the other way that we got to look at it, Leonard, is when these people are talking. I mean, look, whatever happens in Guyana affects the region, right? It affects our ability to travel around the region. It affects everything. And put yourself in Carl Granige's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
The man is over there. He's collaborating. He's talking with foreign dignitaries. He's talking with persons, who's approaching the court and trying to get people to appreciate and respect what is going on here. Can you imagine his mindset when people are going to say, "But hey, if we do for you or we don't do, you guys beat us up terribly."
Mm-hmm.
So he is right. And what bothers me, Leonard, is Granger was on air last night in one of his maybe subsidized platform, and he didn't even say a word. He didn't even say a word, to ask his followers to tone down on the rhetoric, or anything like that. He just can continue on as merrily as possible, and those actions speaks loudly, man, because you're a head of state. You're supposed to lead by example, and you're supposed to be talking to your people. But he doesn't do anything. In fact, last night, I found it strange. He was firing verbal bullets at Major General retired Joe Singh.
Mm-hmm.
The two of them were colleagues in the army, and one, David Granger has made quite some strong assertions about Joe Singh.
Mm-hmm.
We would wait to see what Mr. Singh would say, if he would say anything in response. The man is a diplomat, as you know. He doesn't really speak, unless it really calls for it. But I think when Joe Singh would have mentioned this, when he wrote that letter about dogs of war and so forth, it really struck Granger, because he mentioned that. He mentioned that last night.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found the attitude of the president, for lack of a better word, unbecoming. And he stopped short. Listen. He didn't say anything about the increased property taxes last night. If you check, Leonard, I think you got the same mail that I did with the official gazette. He didn't say anything about that. He didn't say anything about what's happening with regards to people's livelihoods in this country. He didn't speak about all the contracts they're giving away. He's only interested in power. And he did. His words, his words were almost directory. One could sense a foreboding when he's saying Keith Lowenfield or this chief elections officer has to. His words were almost directory, and one wonders where we are going. This is not a man who is in any way reconciliatory. He's not.
Hmm. Yes, and let me read that notice there. I think that's to come back to it. When it comes to property taxes for the city of Georgetown, the mayor and councillors of the city of Georgetown is hereby informing members of the public that property rates for residential and commercial have increased by 10% with effect from 1st of January 2017, being residential 44%, commercial 275%. Man, and it's signed here by Sherry Jerrick, town clerk of Georgetown, acting. Yog, I'm thankful I don't have a property in the city. I can't afford this. I'd be bankrupt.
Well, Leonard, put it this way: whether you have property in the city or not, you will have to pay. Listen,
Yes.
if there is a business in Georgetown that has to find taxes to pay for its existence, the business doesn't print money. It makes money by doing business. And so it will have to now surcharge things like those taxes in its goods and services. So by raising commercial property taxes, for example, you are saying that prices must increase. In raising residential taxes now, how do the residents of Georgetown make money? They go to work. So they're now going to demand from their employers, well, we need more money, we need more salary. Who will have to pay? So whether you're living in the city or not, this tax is for one and all. It's going to affect everybody.
Hmm. Absolutely. And Yog, I think it's about 2:30 now. We are going to hit our phone lines, 226-7453, 226-7453, and of course we want to hear from you. You could text us on 622-222, WhatsApp or normal text, and we're going to try to read some of the pertinent ones. Let's keep it short and sweet, within good taste, with regards to the calls, and both the calls and the text. We want to try to address some of the concerns, and maybe you just want to comment, you call us in and let us know what is some of the concerns with regards to elections and COVID-19 watch, which is here on Kaicho Radio 99.1, 99.5. You could also get us on Kaicho Radio Facebook as well as YouTube or Kaicho News Online. You click the icon there and you're going to get it.
And Leonard,
yes.
if I may, I would just like to say, we have a gentleman in Kanji. He's 88 years old, and every day he ensures that he listens to our program. And there's another gentleman in Monrepo, I believe, that every day, Leonard, he ensures that his sons have to ensure they get the batteries and ensure that the radio works so that he could listen to it, Mr. Deochan Narayan from Monrepo. So I would
Hello,
like
Mr.
to
Deochan.
these are fathers of ours, and yes, hello to you, sir, and a good day to you.
Yes, Yog, and I can remember, growing up in Enmore, and my grandfather loved his transistor radio. He had this big, I think it wasn't a 9 volt, it was a big wrong battery. I can't remember what volt that was, but he always had it. And then when it stopped working with the smaller batteries, he had a big battery strapped on with I think it was rubber bands at the back. So it was always a very funny sight. But that radio was something else that you dial. The kids won't know that. I guess they know about Bluetooth and so. But it is, if you for the old school, like Yog, I have a few gray beard here now, and Yog has some gray there too. So we have something together. You remember those old days. I was telling some of my colleagues this morning to Yog, if you know about the sada roti in the fireside, then you're Guyanese. A couple of them don't know about it, so I said too bad. You got to know about that. That's a real roti. That's a real food. So if you know about it, then you're in good standing. So 226-7453. Yog knows about it and Gildarie knows about it. 622-222. You could send the messages there. There's a yes. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
I was heartened to read Mr. Greenwich's statement, and I so hope that most of us understand the importance of relationships in our country as it and in the rest of the world. As it relates to COVID-19, I seem to agree with you. Somewhere along the line, somebody lift these measures
No,
because
we
it
don't have
doesn't
any measures. We don't have any measures anymore.
it doesn't look so. It does not look so, and I cannot understand how this is happening, and we are rising. When we had one, we had strict measures. Now we rising by 21, 15, 5, 5, and we do measures seem to relapse. But
Mhm.
as to make a point, I don't understand the people that use the word sovereignty if they understand what it means. And Guyana is not in a position to play that card sovereignty.
Mhm.
Sovereignty speaks of absolute power, and it means you must be able to defend yourself against anybody from anywhere. And we certainly cannot do that. And we need our international partners. As tough as Mr. Bonham was, when Venezuela played a heading good, he was friends with Brazil. It's trick. You got to know to do politics. You got to know what you're doing. And we are damaging our waters. And finally, I do not see the CCJ changing anything that Mr. Granger said because he said what he said last night. And it's not if he's going to be swearing. He says he's going to be swearing. My only concern is that I live here and I don't know what the country is going to be. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. And a stark reminder, I don't think Mr. Granger is saying that. I don't want to believe he is saying that. I think Mr. Granger is going to go according to what the GCOM Commission will put forward. And I read this message here to you to understand what another guy needs is thinking in the same vein. Well, guys, another day, and things are not looking so good for Guyana. Granger and his cabal are bent on rigging the elections. Madam Chair will really have to show her mettle as the Iron Lady. Needs to take the bull by the horn and tell Lowenfield to place before her the recounted numbers and the allocated seat. So it is all going to come back to what the commission says. There's disagreement that Lowenfield is a constitutional officer. He's a creature of GCOM, and he is obligated to, as an officer, I think the point did come up when Gokul Budu would have been directed to ensure that he changed figures that he wanted to produce in 2015. He was directed to produce the right thing and come back because he had some incorrect figures. Is that correct, Yog? That's how I read it?
Well, yes. I mean, you read it right. You read it right. But you're so right. The Lowenfield is now saying that nobody can stop him, nobody can instruct him, nobody can tell him what to do. But it is the same commission that would have said openly and publicly that they instructed and they intervened is probably the right word with the former chief elections officer. So if they could have intervened with the former chief elections officer, they certainly can in this one. But Leonard, the situation is really getting dire. On the international scene, we know that Guyana has lost and lost big time. We don't know, the guest we had earlier said that contracts continue to be given out and all of that. But if a government has no money, right? If it has no money and it cannot buy things and so forth, then it means it will start to do things to make that money or to get that money. And this tax increase you're seeing, for example, by the city council is an example of what is ahead then. Because if a government does not have money and you cannot access the oil monies and you're being shut out from the international community and you're insisting that you want to be sworn in because you believe your own translation of valid votes is the only one that matter, then it means you are going to tax and tax and tax everything and everyone. Literally, we have been down that road before. Agriculture, rice, sugar, everything died in this country in the 1980s. Literally, we have seen the entire country slowly but surely grind to a halt. It was when there were serious discussions between the Caribbean leaders. Remember, Sir James did tell us, between himself and Dame Eugenia Charles and Desmond Hoyt and other leaders, that some of these restrictions started to lift, and Desmond Hoyt himself relaxed some of the stringent measures in place. But we are certainly going to be heading down that same road. So because I said that because somebody has asked what is the consequences of them staying and retaining power. Well, staying and retaining power and having sanctions mean you still got to make money for them to get their salaries. You know, I would want to know, and I would urge the newspapers, it is time you publish what is the salary, what is the stipend of the people who sit at the table of the mayor and the councillors. What stipend they earn, what benefits they get, what is their salary, because you know what, is these rates and taxes are paying them. And we are hearing that people are not getting money, and we know people are not being paid because things are hard for everyone. And when things become hard for everyone, Leonard, in this tough time, the insensitivity, I mean, the only word I have here is madness, which I know is your word that you would normally use. I borrow your word. This has to be madness. It is insensitive to go and say you are increasing property taxes for the city of Georgetown, and you're increasing it with effect from January 2017. Retroactive increase of taxes. You got to pay back taxes for January, for 2017, 2018, 2019, and of course you are now overdue for 2020 if you haven't paid. So everybody's in default presently since this thing was gazetted.
Well, I did tell you, Brad Ryan, as a mayor, that I was extremely excited that we have a young man in the office. I'm not sure what he drank last week. I know he's a pandit. I'm not sure that he drinks. But if it is something that it mistakenly went into the Gazette, it needs to be reversed. I don't think at this point in time it's going to be a good pill for the people of Georgetown, especially when they learn it through the official Gazette and not through an official press conference. It is something to think about.
Exactly, Leonard. And this leads me to think some other things. I want to know when last, and maybe it happened. Maybe it happened recently. I just don't know. So I'm asking purely from a position of interest. When last were the audits done? And everything for the city council, because now we have to check everything, because by and large we appreciate that the council has to do its work. We appreciate that the councillors have to ensure that they continue the work of maintaining the city, but the people's money have to be accounted for. It's the people's money, it is not your money. And Leonard, this sneakish way of doing things, it speaks volumes, my friend.
Absolutely. I expect to see some pushback in the coming days with regards to this development when it comes to the taxes being increased in the city by 10%. Here is a question for you, Yog. Here, fellas, will sanctions affect remittances? I presume the person is talking about Grace Western Union remittances or the other one, I think MoneyGram, otherwise through the banks and so on. Yes, these are things that could very well come. Let's say sanctions are being introduced. They could very well say you can't send money to certain categories or maybe all categories of Guyana. Yog?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. It depends what type of sanctions. Sanctions would be tiered. It would be a tiered approach. What type of sanctions? So, for example, Venezuela. As you know, Leonard, I think as of today, today being relative, it would have been yesterday. But as of today's news, we do know that Maduro in Venezuela basically ordered the EU ambassador to pack up and leave the country.
Yes, I saw
and
that.
And that is because the EU had imposed personal sanctions on the ministers of government. And so in retaliation, he said, well, if you don't like us, what are you doing here? Get out of here. So those are some of the things that will happen. Personal sanctions will come in place. When it gets to be a sanction against the entire country, I think, human rights and so forth would, and this is what I believe, that APNO FC is banking on. They're banking that, okay, the world will feel sorry and human rights this and human rights that, and they're not going to impose such stringent sanctions on us. But Leonard, all of the investment that the world has made into ensuring Guyana gets elections, gets free and fair elections, to have their investment thrown away like this, I'm sure there will be repercussions. So, to the point of the question whether money transfers and so forth will be affected, it will be affected. Whether it will have to be stopped, not immediately, I would certainly hope not, because a lot of people depend on it. Leonard, on the other side of things, though, what will happen? If we don't have money as a country, will we be able to import fuel? We'll be able to import things that are on the supermarket shelves. As you know, Guyanese are known to be foreign minded. We prefer foreign based stuff. So very soon you'll hear this government, if APNO FC continues in power, very, very soon, within the next 6 months, you will hear them say, okay, buy local, make local, eat local, produce cassava flour and rice flour and all of that. Very soon you're going to hear all those things being repeated. Because obviously you're going to run short of foreign exchange. And then if you look at the Bank of Guyana position, it is speaking of a dire future ahead. Now, after 5 years of governance, we have a heavy deficit in our economy. That is what APNO AFC has done. After 5 years of government, this is what we have. God knows what will happen after the next 5 years.
Well, he knows. What we do know right now is that there's a story in today's Kaitor News in page 13. COVID-19 safety advisories fallen on deaf ears. The chief medical officer, Dr. Shamdi Prasad, is taken. He says people are not listening. And of course, there's this very stark picture of people on the seawall on Sunday, sitting right next to each other as if it's business as usual, it's life as usual. This thing is not going away in a very short while, and we're not helping it. We're not thinking straight. And I think the authorities, I saw parallel to this in the U.S. I think it's Fauci, I think his name is, that gentleman that is in charge of the COVID situation. And they're looking at what is happening in America. You know, there's a spike again, Yog, because they would have lifted it in some states. Those are the measures, the COVID-19 measures, and all of a sudden you see a spike, and it is getting on a runaway thing. You see the numbers jumping up, the number of deaths jumping up, the number of new cases jumping up, and so America is wondering, why aren't people paying attention that you continue to wear the mask? Nothing has changed. The same virus is there. COVID-19 is around, so we have to continuously pay attention to that, Yog. So that's a story. Chief medical officer, the guy who should know, is telling us be very careful that you hide ears. There's a caller on line. Good afternoon, caller. You on the air?
Hi, Mr. Gildarie.
Yes, it is. You're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. I'm just going to make a point that with the COVID-19 pandemic, right, that we said, Josh, people are not obeying the law. I'm a hard car driver in Borbies, and we have to pay $50,000 extra for one passenger. So why people on the road...
What do you mean $50,000 extra?
For carry one extra passenger. Normally we fetch 4. Now we only allow for fetch 3
right,
due to the pandemic. Now if we have people disobeying the law, right? Why we do put a heavy charge fine on them so they will obey, just like the hire car driver or the taxi man. I think if the fine is heavy, people are going to be afraid. Just like I'm a hire car driver, I'm afraid. That's why I fish my 3 passengers for now because of the pandemic.
Partner, some people, and this is what we're quarreling about. It is very, very simple. This thing is very, very simple. If one side, I think somebody raised the issue, if you're going to see the policemen going down or whoever the officials are going down and close 1-2 stores, and you're not going to the next village or going along the East Bank and see what is happening there, then you have a very stupid system, I would use that word, a very stupid system of monitoring and enforcing. And so why in the first place would you have all these measures in place and you're not enforcing it? People are going to do, or people are going to push the envelope or push it as far as they can. But you're right, because if you've been forced to do that and the other people are not doing that, it's very unfair to you too.
Yeah, it's unfair. Well, I mean, people should just obey the law and do the right thing because it's a very serious, with corona, you
Uh-huh.
know. So I just want to say one thing more. You guys doing a good job. Mr. Yoga, watch your program on 592 in the night. I look forward every night, and I miss it on weekends. And I hope we can get this election issue sorted out, very soon. So just keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
you take care.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
And
Bye.
to all the hire car drivers and minibus drivers, everybody who's hitting the road, providing the essential service, a good day to you right across this country. York, there's a story that we were talking about assistance to the people, people who would have been suffering because of COVID-19. There's a story that fell on the wayside yesterday. There's a story that fell on the wayside yesterday, and there's a public notice coming out from the authorities. It's saying it's distribution of the COVID-19 public assistance voucher. I'm going to send you a copy. The government of Guyana has commenced the distribution of the COVID-19 public assistance vouchers. If you residing on the coast and you receive the voucher, you must follow the steps below to encash it. Now, before we go there, who would have started receiving assistance vouchers? Are these the people who would have filled those application forms? Do you know?
I have no clue.
So they have announced it that people who are receiving those vouchers, that these are the steps. So we're going to come back. We're going to examine it. Once you have received your voucher, select a supermarket of your choice as listed on the voucher flyer, which raises another question. How did they choose a supermarket one against the other?
Correct.
Two, call your chosen supermarket at least 24 hours before you intend to uplift the items covered by the voucher. You must provide your name and identification card number. On the third day, you must visit the chosen supermarket along with the voucher and your ID card. These must be presented to the supermarket representative so the information can be verified. Once your information has been checked, you'll be given a package containing the items covered by the voucher. You will be required to sign the stub of the voucher in which your ID card will be written. You may then leave the supermarket with the item. Individual must observe the Ministry of Public Health's COVID-19 protocols, including the wearing of masks, sanitation of hands, and physical distancing. The voucher is not transferable and cannot be redeemed for cash. So there are several questions about this. Let me see if I send you a copy of it with regards to at what point in time did they start giving out these vouchers here? Who are the people that are eligible for it? Um, I think these are some of the questions that are going to come up. They also would have selected the supermarkets, which is an issue raised. How did they? What was the process used to select the supermarkets? How much money is involved with this? Where's the money coming from? Um, Maybe some thoughts from you, and maybe we could dig into a little of this a little.
Thank you. I do know that a little while back they had invited supermarkets that would be interested in supply to register, but like anything else, we haven't seen a list that would have been published um, with the newspapers or anything like that. And of course, one has to look at the details, the vouchers itself. Uh, are you are you saying that the persons would have to go to the supermarket, which is fine, but when they go to the supermarket, the constraints that they would have to undergo to get their goods? Remember, you're talking about 3 days here, right? I think that
Mm.
says 3 days. On the third day, you would have to go. There may be a lot of questions we can have. At this stage, I would like us to probably get the information before we pick more holes into it. Because the truth is that I'm sure that those people who receive their vouchers may feel elated that they have a voucher and they have some
No,
means,
absolutely. It
some
is a good
help.
thing. It's a good
But
thing.
but I would have even some more holistic questions. What are the areas they have given out in? Which is the first question you asked. Where did they issue these vouchers? Who are the beneficiaries? And what methodology was used to share out these vouchers? And on that note, I wish to point out that I think they started an exercise to have people registered. As you know, you would have read and shared the request to register yourselves and register persons on their web page. However, we do know that persons are also going around the countryside. And I wish to caution people, if anybody comes up to you to say that they come to have you register, you should challenge them, ask to see their IDs, ask to see their approvals. Don't let anybody make you sign any forms that they can later use as a petition with your name. There's too much fooling of people going on. In addition, Leonard, we need to know from the CEC how much vouchers and what area. That is critical. What criteria they have used to share out these vouchers, and what's the value, of course.
Yes, and I think people should be very happy with this if it is indeed coming. But so many other questions that need to be asked. How is it going to be thing? Are these part of the, I think about 8,000 applications they would have received? How much is it? Is it 20,000 per person? Is Joe getting 15,000 and me getting 25,000? How much money is involved here? So in the meantime, while we try to gather that, I'm going to read some text here. Good day, gentlemen, and this is coming, I think, from Toronto. Good day, gentlemen and Guyanese. Shazad here in Ontario, I think this is Canada. I've been observing events keenly. What I've gleaned is that David Arthur Grange is playing chess while Barjagdio and his cabal are playing draft. The board is the same pieces and the rules are different. For the love of Guyana, if we do not want to go down the road to perdition, civil society from all walks of life should rise up and approach the ABC and E countries to place sanctions on the riggers and their immediate family immediately, coming from somebody there in Ontario. There was an article in Sunday's Kaichur News that became of COVID-19. The city council is saying that you don't have to pay rates and taxes for the balance of the year. And there was even a phone number, 226-7717. You can call, which I did and was told this is not true. Can you check this out? Yes, I think there was a clarification with regards to the story. We did call, I think the mayor and city council office would have called, and there is a correction clarification in today's newspaper with regards to that. Good afternoon, all. Is the doctor talking about property taxes or rates and taxes? Yog, I think this is for you. Of course, the MNCC is a waste. Imagine they can't pay their employees in time and owing the NIS employees' contribution. They're running at a loss, so they need to be closed down. Stop being suspicious about supermarket. People need food. I'm not sure what is it that this caller is saying. We are not questioning, or the issue here is not about vouchers. What we're saying, we just saw it by the way. There's not an official press release or anything. We just saw it by the way that there's some vouchers available for the people. The people need to be told if there's a voucher system that's available so they could have access to it. We have thousands of persons who would have been paying attention, waiting for this, and it hasn't come out in a press release. So the question is not about the supermarket. It is about this new system that we have available here that we want to share with the people of Guyana. Yog?
It's property rates.
It's property rates. Very
Yes.
good. So I think we could go straight to the lines now. Caller, good afternoon. You're on the air.
I'm calling from Bath.
Bath.
There is a popular Chinese supermarket in Bath, and due to the pandemic, we have to close 6 o'clock. And you find that the police will barge on the boys at the restaurant, at the Chinese place, and even dump them in the jeep and carry them up. And the people, I'm not just saying race, but the people in Hope 28 Village number 5 can bingy 3 feet so close to each other, and they turn a deaf ear in them. Thank you.
Okay, so if the authorities in Berbice are hearing about this, they should take note. People complaining about the authorities, what is happening up there. Let me go to some other messages quickly, Yog. Good afternoon to you guys. Thanks for updating your country, what's going on around us. By the way, I'm not getting work. I'm doing weeding, but most of the people I work for don't have money now. What is not me, I'm studying as a person who has plenty kids, who had plenty kids and now working too. People need help. Only one set of people getting help, but only one set of people getting help. That's what the person is saying. And we go to the next one very quickly, Yog. Hi, good afternoon. I am texting in concern with COVID-19. Why is Morocco getting the most positive cases and the other regions are not getting? Why? And we getting lockdown every other day. We don't have things set, and when we don't get to work, the police in Morocco beating me. This is a situation we have to pay attention to, Yog. Morocco seems to be a little hotspot now, and I think because of the number of cases, I think about 63 cases would have tested, and they had, I think, more than 2,000. We'd have to check back the figures on that, but it is a situation close to the borders there that we have been paying attention. In Region 1 yesterday, a doctor's quarter, I think Mabruma, a doctor's quarter burnt to the ground, and that would have thrown a blow into the story of the COVID-19 fight in that region there. Yog, it is becoming very, very clear based on what Deodat and the private sector official would have strengthened the arguments, the story that is coming out with regards to the people, what they're going through. And we've seen the gentleman calling businesses, people not eating, people not getting food, people having many children, you're having this voucher system. Do we have control of this at the moment? Is it something that's out of control, and if you don't watch it, it's going to get, we're going to come to a crisis level? Are we in the crisis level at the moment?
I think we are getting there. And we got to be careful how crisis would be used or crisis could be played. And, I would hate to think that we will allow this thing to get out of control, because when it gets out of control, then each and every person, even those who are taking such care for themselves and family, will now be at risk. But, Leonard, I would certainly hope that you cannot call on the authority. What authority? I was going to say the COVID-19 task force, but that's headed by Mr. Joe Harmon, who is spending all his time saying what he said last day: concede what? Concede to who? He was giving a clear instruction to Mr. Granger. Granger cannot, or Granger will not concede. Slip of the tongue, that may be good here, but Leonard, the health crisis has taken since day one, has taken a political turn. So people have no confidence in it. We have seen and we have heard all the complaints about CDC and everything else. People lack confidence in it. Where do we go from here? Well, where we go from here, we can bring it under semblance of control if the country is brought under semblance of control. If the rigors that are squatting in government would allow a new government to be declared and allow a new government to be sworn in, and let us get on with running this country's business. But they continue to squat and they continue to hold this country at ransom. Meanwhile, they're increasing taxes because that's the only way they can make money. Leonard, they're not going. The productive sector has come ground to a halt. Only gold probably doing something. What else? The productive sector has ground to a halt. To their credit, gold prices are going up all over the world. But again, if it's not for the private entrepreneurs exporting gold, none of that gold money would be coming to the country back. It would all be, once again, caught up in a partial sanction.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a problem. The only other way, as I keep repeating, is taxes. And we have already seen that started. Compliments of the mayor of Georgetown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that blessing early in the day like today. I heard the caller from Bat about the Chinese supermarket. The owners need to be dealt with. Persons are imbibing openly at the supermarket. COVID-19 measures are being ignored. And so this is another side to the story to the caller. There is a caller online. Yes. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Just want to ask you to check into this thing for us. I've known a number of people who applied for this public assistance from the Albaisong area who would follow up. A visit came from whoever it was and check them out. But I have not heard of last night of nobody receiving any voucher. And then I'm hearing here that this voucher thing is being shared. So I would like to know if you guys can follow up on it. Because every time I go home, I get questions about it from people who are encouraged to do it. And now I sure as hell they're going to ask me when I go home when these vouchers share. So please follow up on it for me because I myself look all over the line just now. I haven't seen it anywhere saying that they did share it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. And I think the way things are going, we put it up on screen there. If you are joining us on Facebook or on YouTube, it is on screen there what have been shared with us. So you could have a look at it. At this point in time, Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself have very little information on that. What I could tell you is that the way things are going, he and I might have to apply too. Right, Yog?
Yes, yes, with the way
Don't
things are going, certainly.
don't speak negative things. I'm just kidding you. Okay. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Lowenfield will have to resign tomorrow. Myers will present the official statement of recount numbers, and the Iron Lady will speak. This is somebody foretelling in the future here. Granger will concede, and Irfan Ali will be sworn in on Friday. I too have a dream. Yes, the person have a dream. On a serious note, we are at the stage because of the intervention of CARICOM and resistance from law-abiding citizens who are passionate about democracy, especially the non-partisan media. Keep the pressure on. Ice is solid until you apply some heat. Stay safe and God bless. So we have a pastor in the house here. We have a preacher in the house here.
Very well, very
Yes, I
well.
like that.
Very well said.
Yes.
And Leonard, if I may, by the time you're getting to the other messages, I know that there is a concern with the CCJ case as well, right? Because I think former AG would have written his concerns about one of the attorneys for the defendant that has a position in the judicial system that overlooks the CCJ. And so I think there's an accusation of conflict of interest. But on a more interesting note, I forgot to mention this at the top of our program when you were talking about Greenwich's statements last night. I found it interesting that Carl Greenwich also, he was asked a question about whether there was any truth in the narrative that Jagdeo is accused of making some concession to Venezuela. And Carl Greenwich, I think, emphatically put that to rest by saying he doesn't know about it. Nobody has told him anything about it. He has not seen any documentation to it. And, you know, that was basically brought to a sudden screeching halt last night as well.
Interesting. Carl Greenwich, an emergent story there. Good afternoon, Yog and Leonard. I'm a regular listener to your program. You both are doing a good job. Let me go on. We're going back to the old days. So I would like to tell you that there's a group of Guyanese going house to house in our area this morning asking, they use another word, but I didn't put it in, asking for donation to make hampers for children. I don't know if they're telling the truth or just using the children for their own benefit. Thank you. I'm not sure which area is this. It didn't say. But it's saying that people coming wrong to the house. I'm not sure if there's anything wrong with going, but it's if you're genuine and if you're taking money to do something genuine. And a number of persons would have reached out to yourself and myself, Yog, to assist. We have not really reached out to those persons. We could be very careful. Next thing you know, Yog and Gildarie get accused of taking people money. Be very careful about those things. We don't want to
And
get...
on that note,
bad name is a bad thing.
correct. And on that note, let me also thank Pam Singh on both of our behalf there, Leonard. Pam Singh, all the way from Antigua, one of our followers and viewers of this program, for making contributions towards our donations and our sharing out of hampers. I know Sister Pam says she prefers to not be named, but it is our duty. And as well as Sister Jean. And there is a brother in Canada, Brother Ravi Singh, who has also made contact. And, you know, people are interested to know what is going on in Guyana and how they can help this situation here. So, Leonard, the other reason why the information from CDC is extremely important. I mean, this, up to yesterday afternoon, the team we have up at the east coast of Demerara there, that team went around and they were sharing out food stuff. And as you know, your team and that team would have combined and they were sharing out food stuff. And the team member there at East Coast of Demerara is a gentleman by the name of Devon. Now, Devon went around, and one of the conversations he had with people, which makes this interesting, that if the CDC is giving out hampers and food stuff in a particular area, we shouldn't be duplicating our efforts. And this is why it is important to get that type of information, you see, because there are other people who are needy. Makes no sense to go into one area twice.
Yeah, makes sense. So we have to pay attention to that. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I asked this question last night on room 592, but it was not answered. My question is there any way that Mr. Lowenfield's CEO, if he's removed from his position at GCOM, can he tie up the commission in a legal battle at the court, which may cause further delays as to the declaration of the presidency? Interesting question. Yog, over to you on that.
Short answer would be no. He has to perform a duty, and if he's let go for failing to perform that duty, then he can take up a case of, if he wants, he will probably go to court for wrongful dismissal or whatever. But the decision or the work needs to be carried out by somebody else. So the work or the job that you have to complete yes, should not be tied to the act of discipline. They are two different things, and the court will not hold up the act because the person is disciplined.
Yes. And so there is a call. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick. I live in Brazil, and I have you here on Kaicho News Online every Monday afternoon, every at the night too. So hello to you, Patrick, and all the other persons overseas who would have been joining us day in and day out, not only in the afternoon, but in room 592 every single day. You guys have been with us, except this weekend when Yog and I realized that as you get older, you find pains in the body. In some places that you can't believe that you would get pains. You get up in the morning and you said, wow.
Speak the truth. Speak the truth. All Sunday we were out all over the place sharing out stuff, right? So
I don't like talking about that, man. We gotta do what we gotta do. But
yeah,
hello to
but Leonard, let me with I mean, I know that we don't normally use this program, but I must pay homage to 88-year young man, Clement Insenali. He's a gentleman that highlighted the fact that when an old person like myself go to vote, how do you expect me to ensure that my X is in the middle of the box without touching one of the lines? But I know who I voted for, and the cross of the X is there, and it indicates who I voted for. So well done, Clement Insenali. He's Leonard, you'll be blessed to reach his age, wouldn't you?
I'm not sure, I've been thinking about that, but there's a conversation for another day, you guys. I'm
For
not
another
sure
day, yeah.
I want to live that long. I'm not sure. I got to think about it a little. Let me see. Hi, Leonard. Persons came into Diamond 24th Street June last week asking for money. Two male person in a car. I'm not sure about this either. You just got to careful. If somebody come asking for money, you got to feel comfortable giving them that money. Don't give money to people that you don't know, and they're ways to check.
Yeah, and also I think CDC has expressed that if persons want to donate, you can donate directly to the CDC, but be careful who are the persons that would be representing them. You should make a phone call to the office and verify that these persons are appropriately approved.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Your elections COVID-19 watch here on Kaicho Radio 99.1, 99.5. You could get us on Kaicho Radio on YouTube as well as Facebook, Kaicho News Online as well. You click the icon there and you get us. I think there's a call online. Yes, good afternoon, caller. You on the air?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I see these guys on the Kaitor 592.
Yes, this is Kaicho Radio. This is elections COVID-19. Room 592 is this evening, 7:30 p.m.
Okay, this afternoon.
This evening, yes, 7:30 p.m. Well, you could go ahead. You want to say something?
I want to say something about this election.
Yes.
You see, what happened, this election is true what happened because it was prophesied for all these things that this government is doing right now. It was a prophecy, and the prophecy has fulfilled to see with clear eyes for what these people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is true what they're doing, but God be in it, and things must happen for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead.
this is not easy for what is going on right now. That Granger is not wanting to give up. He just wants to do, but all that I could see, Satan operating in them to do all this wicked deeds thing. But God in charge. God going to see it. God will see that this government change.
Mm-hmm.
We must get a better future in this life. We must get better things to happen in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this taxing, the taxing, the airport tax, and a woman complained from Timeri that she was paying $12,000 a year for her land. And when she gets in there, they suddenly tell she got to pay $24,000 a year for land. It is not easy. Where can that woman find that money to pay $24,000 a year for land? Everywhere you go is a tax to this, extra money.
Mm-hmm.
All this are going on right now. It's not an easy task, and we're glad that these guys are in the air, that people can understand what they are doing. They are doing the work that everyone could see. The eyes could see what is going on today.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for the work that you are doing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
and do
Thanks
have a
very
pleasant rest of the day.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. So right across Timeri, Linden, Region 1 to up to 10, wherever you listening from, joining us, I want to say hello to you. And overseas, Brazil, of course, we have somebody that's been coming consistently, Yog, from Norway. I don't know what time it is in Norway when we're in room 592, but I rather presume it's around after midnight. Thank you for being with us every single day in, day out. Even St. Lucia, gentleman, Mr. Dion Ryan, hello to you, sir. And Toronto, New York. I have many friends down in New York there. A good day to you from Kaichur Radio, Dr. Yog Mahadeo, and myself, Leonard Gildarie. There's a caller online. Good afternoon, caller. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're on the air.
Hi, gentlemen. Pleasant good afternoon to
Good
you
afternoon, sir.
guys. Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I would like to touch on this the voucher.
Yes.
The voucher thing, they advertise some numbers on the television that you can call to register. Now, when you call these numbers, the cell phone numbers are not working. They're out of order. The landline number, between the hours of 8 and 12, when they said the office will be open, between those hours you call, that number always busy. At exact 12 o'clock, the number would start to ring when the office closes.
Mm-hmm.
When you go online and you try to register online, the way they structure the form online, when you reach a certain part, they shut you out. So you cannot get to register. So this whole thing they're talking about, they started to share voucher. I don't think it's making sense, and I don't think it's true.
And this is with the CDC, you say?
Yeah. The ad that they put on the television that you can call these numbers if you doesn't have access to internet. If you doesn't have access to internet, if you doesn't have access to this, you can call these number, and somebody would be on the phone to help you register. And when you do that, you're not getting through to none of the numbers. The cell numbers are telling you that those numbers are not in service. The landline between 8 and 12, it's always busy. Exact 12 o'clock, it starts to ring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We would have somebody investigating it from Kaiser News. I mean, try to put a news article in the newspaper with regards to this. It is something that is new. It's just by the way we saw the ad on it, or the notice, the public notice.
Yeah, since
We're not
last
sure.
week I was trying to get you to the program to inform you guys about it.
Wow. All right, so we're gonna continue to follow it.
The other thing I want to touch on is how is it that the government can not the government, how is it that these guys can still use NCN to publish to put whatever they want to put out there to confuse people's brains and all of these things?
Mm-hmm.
That is one. Two, how is it that Mr. James Bond, Christopher Jones, and this guy Duncan was able to bring Land Rovers into this country duty free? And they're holding no government office, they're not entitled to duty free.
Well, I'm not sure whether they bought in duty free. You have any thing to that effect?
You don't have to, I don't think you have to get anything to that effect. You use your common sense.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that is just my view.
Yes.
Secondly, the going to the COVID-19 thing, the police is talking about the curfew and all of these things. The Apno FC have people marching around with music and a set of people following them, and where were the police? The police was nowhere to be seen to stop that. You got that set of people lining up on the seawall doing whatever they want. Where's the police? Nowhere to see that. After 6 o'clock, you go around this country, you see people lining, people doing whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
People are doing whatever they want. So nobody is taking anything serious. Nobody's taking anything serious. And then we have a set of people who they put to lead the COVID-19 task force. All they're thinking about is this selfishness and want power. And I keep saying this. Joseph Harmon did not give up his dual citizenship. Why is he fighting for power in this country? These men don't get in the pension, how much $1 million pension they're drawing and these things, and they're stifling young people and stifling this country, and they're talking about they have Guyana at heart. I had so much respect for David Granger, but it's hard for me to respect that man as a leader. When you're a leader, when you are leading, you have to forget about yourself. You care about the people that you're leading. Take, for example, yourself and Mr. Mahadeo. Your guys are a true example of leadership, what leadership's supposed to be like. Mr. Glenn Lal, open up his radio station, giving people time to express certain things. People can call you guys and ask for help. You guys try to reach out. You can't call Granger and Harmon and Lawrence and none of them and ask them for nothing because they have no time with you. Mm-hmm. James Bond and them that the back of truck spitting a set of crap out of the mouth and giving people flyers and trying to ing them up so when the right decision is made about the election, a set of people can run in on the streets trying to do a set of stupidness.
All right. Thank you very much for that, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. And so, yes, Yog, a lot of frustrated people.
A lot. And Leonard,
people
let me
very
tell you
angry, you
something.
know.
But Leonard, there is even a greater degree of the depression and anger here. Let me tell you. The CDC would have advertised that, apply online to get yourself registered. Leonard, the poorest people in this country, they don't have a telephone line. They don't have internet. So how can you describe what these people are doing? How can you describe the actions that they're undertaking? I mean, this is beyond madness. It is beyond belief in some ways. And the caller is right. I mean, caller, thank you for calling in. I mean, the truth is that people are frustrated, but more than that, Leonard, people are punishing. Punishment seems to never cease with the way things are going. So the caller has expressed the frustration of a lot of Guyanese, people who don't even have, look, the caller before said, same caller said that when you call between the working hours, it's busy. It may be busy because a lot of people are trying to get them, But what about those that don't have a phone? Leonard, you and I know people who have tried to get to reach to us by asking us to call them. You've had persons call into this program to say, I need help, please call me back. Because they don't have the credit, they don't have the money to pay to make a phone call. But, oh my God, I don't know how to describe
No,
this.
it's very, very heartbreaking, Yog. I mean, you and I, aside from this program here, we are being contacted by so many persons, and I wish that I had $1 billion. Maybe we could have done so many other things that the authorities are not doing, that is not being done, that we should be paying attention to, and it's heartbreaking. It's very, very heartbreaking. Some of the stories that you're gonna hear about, the last time that I had milk in the house. Um, I had some gentlemen that came here, citizens, decent citizens, who have no fear, who not ashamed, who has absolutely not embarrassed by calling out to Yoga and say, look, I'm coming by you. Could I just have something, anything that you could give to me? And they're there, and you could see that is not something they're accustomed to. But there's a sense of desperation now that they really want to provide, put something on the table. They can't bear it to see the kids them going through that. It's I can't even begin to tell you, Yog, and I guess you're hearing the same stories, and you see some of the comments from our people on Facebook too. They're experiencing the same thing. Their families, they know of somebody who's experiencing the same thing. And you know what was one of the hardest thing for many Guyanese, and I think thousands of Guyanese. We were at a certain position before COVID. Well, COVID, you can't help it, it's a pandemic. It is very, very difficult for you to have been living at a level, and then all of a sudden you hear you had things going well, right? Yeah, you might not have been able to eat mutton or the good things every single day, but you're eating. All of a sudden, you don't have a job. You don't have anything in the
Right.
cupboard or the fridge. That's difficult. That's something, especially when the kids staring at you. You have the bank on your shoulder. You have courts calling for you. How do you answer some of the questions?
Correct. Correct. And Leonard, the caller also has a point, and it is something that we continue to look at and continue to investigate. But a little while back, we did share that there is concern about duty-free concessions and people selling duty. This is something that's been ongoing. Kaicho News has reported this in the past and in the present. People are selling duty-free letters, and those people who are getting away with these things, we got to ensure that it is exposed and brought to a full stop. The caller is absolutely right. There are vehicles that is registered in a member of parliament's name that is being driven by persons within the public health system. They're Lexuses and stuff like that that would have been bought under duty-free concession, but other people driving these vehicles. We know that. And this is what the government is doing. It is every day that it stays in power illegally, there are lands being sold, there are assets being moved out, there are things being done, and Kaiser News has been exposing it. You take Kaiser News last week, the lands up at East Coast were being sold out. There are things that are happening, and I would certainly hope that we can get the information to make it public, because the public needs to know. All of those people they're calling out, they went on trucks, Leonard, to share pamphlets with incorrect information. They did not take a mask out to share out. They did not take a food hamper out to give to the people. They hired a truck with loud music to go there and share sheer lies, a falsity in a pamphlet, in a flyer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is the ridiculousness that we have here. That is the height of an uncaring set of persons who want to stay in government. And these are the people who are enjoying the duty frees, and they're going out there and living the good life, while the rest of the people can't even have a life.
Yes, and good afternoon, gentlemen. I have a quick question. The government said they are doing phase 2 of the opening of the airport from tomorrow. How can you open an airport if you can't even enforce your basic plans for your own citizens? Our own people do not adhere to the curfew measures, and we all know by now that non-essential businesses continue to operate. The police and task force have no time with keeping people in check. So why are we opening the airports? Very good question. Very good point. If you can't get it right here, what are we doing? I think we're going to open and see ourselves with the same situation what the U.S. is standing or facing at the moment. They're facing with a problem with a spike. They tried reopening and then realized that people go back to live their life or do things normal without any kind of protection, and there was a spike. More people die. And so I'm not sure opening up the airport is something that we could do at this point in time. There has to be an assessment. If you can't enforce it now, what do you believe can happen down there? Does it mean that everybody that comes into the country go into quarantine? Let's say you land your three planes per week, right? Um, any one of them, Caribbean Airlines or so, each one of the planes have 200 persons. Every time they land here, 200 persons go into quarantine, or do you produce something that it is a very difficult situation to handle, because you could very well do a test about 2 days back, present it to the people at the airport or the travel agency. Then you go on the plane, and just before you hit the plane, so you're infected by something at the airport here. It is something to think about. We have to look at all those options. The CDC is collaborating with the Ministry of Social Protection. Hence, you get the assistance based on your need. I think this is maybe somebody from the Ministry of Social Protection. We'd have to get on to them and talk a little about how they're going about doing some of the things that they do in the application. That is, some starve to death and some eat to death. Glenn is a champion. Glenn, I'm not sure what I mean by this, whether he eats. I'm just kidding. I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. But Leonard, there is another dimension here, and I would like to comment on something. Lexi Singh has commented that regrettably, Kaiser News and Yog Mahadeo and people like us are collectively responsible for getting the PNC in power, because we have been critical of the PPP.
You want me to answer that, or you going to answer that?
No. I know I know. This is why I said let me pick it up, because here is what, my dear sister Lexi. Here is what. Whatever the PPP was doing, it lost the elections because the population did not agree. Change is important. Had we not seen a change of government, you wouldn't have known that this set would do what it is doing. Yes, we are all feeling the pain for it. But in my own personal view, had we allowed status quo to continue, we don't know where we would have ended up. It was not a nice place, and it certainly is not a nice place. Change is always important. In hindsight, one could say it was much better then than it is now. But without it now, you could not have compared yesterday. We would have been beating up on each other. So there continues to be a lot of concerns about what is happening now compared to then. I would want to say the PPP, my assessment and Leonard's assessment is that PPP is not in office now, and we cannot assess them. We can assess who is in office, as we did pre-2015, and this is the wrong that they're doing, and we are calling them out for it. Leonard, on that note, I also wish to say a couple of outstanding things has happened. We have seen the AFC being the hypocrites they are. We have seen Moses Nagamutu being what he truly is. These parties and these persons, the WPA, for example, their true identity, their true personage, their true aspirations have come to the fore. Here were people that went and picketed against some of the things that they have now ended up doing. All of these duty-free concessions, all of what the National Assembly is doing and the benefits and so forth, now you're looking at these people, and now we know who they are and what they are and what they represent. Leonard, you'll remember that one current government member of parliament would have said to you and I that, when we were in opposition, it's a different thing to talk when you're in opposition versus when you're in government. It's a very different thing. But guess what? We know also it's a very different thing, because you had the money then, you had the power then. When you get it, here is what you do with it. But the truth is, having this kind of argument does nothing more than frustrate us all. What I think, Leonard, what Kaiser News has been committed to doing is to speak out continuously and in the same vein. I have done the same. We continue to expose what we feel is wrong. You cannot have one group of persons, as the person just said, eating to death, and another set of persons fasting to death. No, there is enough, and it can go around for everybody. Leonard, the education system is a prime example. You're telling children to get online and study. How many of them have internet access? You and I have internet access, and we still get cut off every other day.
I think we should get ready for about 10 to 4. We're going to get cut off. But you're right, Yoga. Let me address Lexi, I think it is. My dear, nothing will change with Kaiser News. If there's a change in government and the next government goes in, you could expect the same thing because we have a mandate to the people of Guyana. Yog Mahadeo, being the independent that he is, will continue to be in the way that he is because that's what he knows. If the government of the day, which always falls under the big spotlight, does not perform, they are going to get criticized, and it is natural. If you look at what happens, let's use the good United States for example. The number one person, if you Google and see the number one person with the most hits, it would be Donald Trump. He is the president of the day. So the attention is, he is the one who makes the decision on laws. He affects your pension, he affects immigration, he affects almost everything, foreign policy, everything there. So if he messes up, he screws up, he's going to be the one. If he does something bad, he's going to be criticized. If he does something good, it comes out in the news. So you become the person of the day at all times because you're in the hot seat. Same thing with the government of the day. You are always going to be in the hot seat. It's natural. The media is going to be looking at you. What are you doing about pension? What are you doing about the road? You have here the opposition get blamed for the roads in your area. No, it's going to be the government of the day. Well, I've been here 5 years. You've been in there, and you ain't doing nothing for my road. You haven't looked after my dam. If you were part of the farming system, you haven't looked after my dam, my drainage irrigation trenches. They haven't been cleaned for 6 years. What are you doing? And you want me to vote for you again? Those are the kind of things because it's natural. So let's get it. And people ask, because they would come back, they need to blame somebody. It says, well, you put them in there. The fact is, if you to ask Gildarie, I would say that Glendale is going to say it to you. And if you guys have any questions, he's told me so many times, let Yog and Gildarie tell the people out there that I'm available 24/7, 624-6456. I'm giving you guys a number. I think he's going to kill me after this, but he did say to give it to you. I hope he doesn't regret it. 624-6456. Call him and you could talk to him about anything that you want to talk to him about. Maybe if you believe that his newspaper is not going right, if he's being too critical, whether he's being too soft, you tell him. Tell him very, very clearly. He says that.
Yeah, but Leonard, sorry to cut in. You are right, but you know what? The truth is the truth, and the truth has to be spoken regardless of who is in power, because the long-term objective here is that ultimately our children and grandchildren must realize that, a country cannot and must not be run like this. I have said, like somebody yesterday attacked me, Leonard, by saying, you are the one that's saying never trust the PNC again. And how could you trust the PPP again? It's not a matter of trust and distrust. You have been given a second chance and you have failed miserably. Would I not trust the PNC again? I trust the PNC would find some decent leaders that can take the reins of that party back to some degree of respectability. But the ones there presently, they don't deserve any respect and any vote in the future. But I'm hoping, I know there are good persons within the party. I know there are good persons within the PPP. I know there are good persons within all the political parties. The good persons have to realize we cannot be beaten on our head by despotic leaders who wants to be powerful and doesn't care about anyone else. You got to speak up and speak out. The days for one-man leadership and one-man this and one-man dictatorship has to end, and it must end with our generation. We cannot pass on such a thing to our children.
Absolutely. And so good afternoon. After listening to you guys every day, I don't have a radio. I'm using an old Alcatel phone. I think many people could connect with this. I'm using an all Alcatel phone with FM, and good to hear from you guys. I think, and they also saying, I think sharing out the voucher, they should go over to the region to some of the people who don't have internet. Thank you very much for the good work. And so, what a person is saying there, that many people don't have internet, so they'd have to find some other ways of getting the message out to people. And you know what? They would have to actually reach out to these people, Yoga. I mean, there would even be some people who might not have access to newspapers because you barely got enough money to eat. Last thing you're thinking about is buying a newspaper, or anything else. And so even if you probably don't have light in your house, so how are you going to be listening to radio or so? So it is a very difficult thing. How does the message get across? I think after this, when all this, I guess, when we could come back to some degree of normalcy, we'd really have to look back at what we said in the open in the early days from March the 2nd, Yog, which is we questioned what exactly is the role of our NDCs, the Neighborhood Democratic Councils, in our communities. We questioned the role of the Regional Democratic Councils, the RDCs, even the municipalities of the town councils and so on. When you look at them, what are the role? Should they know where Yog Mahadeo lives, whether he is somebody who's in need? Do they know if Gildarie has elderly, his father is old, bedridden, and he probably needs help for that father that he has. These are some of the questions, because really, when we vote these people in there, we want them to do something better for the community. We want to see improved drainage, we want to see improved roads, security, lights, those kind of things. And they have to come up with the necessary programs in which the communities, they have to do something with the collection of our rates and taxes, so that we could have a quality of life, which is something that we've been working very hard. Pensions, those are the kind of thing that we want to see a government to look after.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
there's a lot of work to be done, and we have to do the assessments as we go down the road. I think, let me see if there's any other thing. Tonight in room
I,
592, Yoga, what are we looking at?
yeah, I know we're getting down to time, but you raise an important point there with the NDCs and so forth. And indeed, there are some NDCs in this country. And Leonard, we need to probably pick up back the couple of years national budget and the amount of monies that NDCs and municipalities. There's one municipality I know for sure that in pre 2015 it used to return money to the central funds.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't spend it because it didn't want the then government to look good. And those things continue. NDCs that take on a political angle, they don't let the people get the benefit of whatever allocations are there because they don't want a government of the day look good. Those are the kind of things has to change. And this is why our entire election system has to change. We have to go one day, sooner or later, we'll have to go to the point where if a person is the best person that is elected by his community, he is the one that enters into the National Assembly. Not the head of a political party must decide who is his choir boy or choir girl, and that's the person must be loyal and remain with him. It has to be what the people want. Leonard, the room 592 tonight, as you know, everybody's concerned about the elections and the implications, and we have seen some promotions within the army. We have seen you mentioned the commissioner of police that has not gone on leave. You have mentioned another person too. And some of those things we need to assess. What are the implications for good governance, if governance at all in the country? And tonight we have invited Mr. Kit Nascimento to join us in room 592. As you know, Mr. Nascimento was a former member of the was a cabinet member, right? Was a minister of the PNC government, of the Burnham government. Mm-hmm. He and David Granger would have been colleagues within the same political party in the past. And so we have invited Mr. Kit Nascimento to join us in room 592 to talk about the elections, to talk about the implications of some of the decisions that Granger and his team making presently and how it affects the entire country. Now, remember also, Kit Nascimento sits from the perspective of having served all of the governments from 1970s, coming right down. He was a minister for Burnham. He was a communications person. He offered communications advice to the PPP government in the later years. And I think he also became a spokesperson for this current government in its initial years as well. So it would be interesting to see the angle he's going to take on how, whether he's going to be defensive or he's going to be as outspoken as we know Kit can be. But we will leave that for tonight.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are going to head to, there's some callers here. Yes, good afternoon, caller. You on here?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Pretty good, sir. Go ahead.
Leonard, what are your thoughts about the nation children writing the common entrance tomorrow with this mask on their face? Would they make it, or would they haven't? They would. I mean, would they be comfortable in that thing wholly so tomorrow and Thursday?
Well,
That's the question.
well, I will answer you off here, right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that is a very, very good question. I wanted to say best luck to all the students, grade 6 students, thousands of them who would be hitting the schools tomorrow to write the exams. My daughter is one of them. She has some respiratory problems. The mask would have been a concern of us. We were even contemplating not having her write the exams, but we deal her going to a school that is next to us, and then she write a placement in keeping with what the Ministry of Education would have said. But we determined at the last moment that she's ready to write it, but we're still a little worried. I think she would have been practicing wearing the mask, but the mask is a problem. For many kids, it's not something that's very comfortable. There's some plus sides and lots of negatives. The plus side is that it's 2 days of exams. So it's morning, afternoon, morning, afternoon. So 4 sessions thereabout to write the 4 subjects: science, maths, English, and social studies. And I think they're going to do, let's say, 4 hours. There's about what? It's 4 hours, Yog, on each session?
Yes, I would think so.
It's about 4 hours each. So we're talking about 8 hours per day. Let's say you go till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's hope that it's less than that. It's going to be a very difficult thing for many of those students because children, they're very fidgety. There's some of them who'd sit quietly, but for the ones who are not accustomed, they're not accustomed of wearing it at home because they would have been home since March. It's not an easy thing. So yes, very, very good question. We've been trying to ask. I know that many parents will not be having the children right. They don't want to take the chance, but it is something that many parents don't want to waste time either. They want to get it over with and done. So the kids are going to be prepared in that sense. They would have been prepared for it. They would have been probably practicing wearing the mask. I think there's some special masks. It's not the normal big ones. It's a soft, I think, cloth one that is imported. And so let's see what happens here. Well, we haven't heard from the Ministry of Education as yet. They have not told us anything as to the preparation. We're hoping to see a press statement coming out and wishing the children best of luck and maybe some other advice there. But very good question.
Yes, indeed. And we have to be concerned about our children. Leonard, we can bemoan the lack of information, the lack of cohesiveness in terms of the information flow from the Ministry of Education. You and I have called on them to come out and speak. We know that the politics, the way the politics is in Guyana makes a lot of persons hesitant to come out and speak with us. A lot of the education professionals are very hesitant to engage. But Leonard, I worry for our children because remember, they got to get to school. They got to travel in the public health, the public transportation system. They got to be tested when they get to school. Their temperature will be taken. The good thing is many of them would have gone for the past couple of days and would have been through it. And they may have, I'm hoping that a lot of them would practice. I certainly hope that doctors will be on standby and the necessary precautions would have been available at every one of the examination centers, just in case one of the children would have been a little bit under the weather and may try to get something, may try to get some help.
Yes, I thank you for that, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Now joining us, Elections COVID-19 Watch. And let us tell you, this morning, the International Court of Justice would have begun the hearings on that border case that we have with Venezuela. It could take us up to about 5 years, we were told initially, for the matter to be completed and for that judicial arm of the United Nations to rule. The court is located in The Hague, and they are looking at the aspect of whether it has a jurisdiction right now to listen to the matter. And Venezuela is not participating in the case. It says it's not participate. It does not recognize the authority, but Guyana nevertheless wants to have the matter with and to have a rule in which to be armed with, so it could be able to deal with it in a way if Venezuela decides to take it to the next level. So the case began this morning with Sri Ramphal, among others, who would have presented arguments in the absence of Venezuela, and they would have presented Guyana's case. It made me remember that song, Yog, not a blade of grass. It's something that should be playing. But at the same time, Yog, I'm not sure whether we should be pushing that angle. We have been doing tremendous business, although Venezuela stopped us in 2015 with regards to that oil for rice deal that we would have had for them going back to about 2009, 2010. Remember that very lucrative Petrocarib deal that we supplied them with rice and they would supply us with fuel. They would have stopped that in 2015, and we were hoping that we could have gotten, there's a big market there. Fortunately for us, in this time here, we have started back doing a significant amount of rice with Venezuela, not through an official means, but via private sector to private sector kind of. We are doing some fuel with them, and of course, there's a big cross-border market, although we have the borders blocked off there. So we have a very warm relationship with the people of Venezuela. We have, in fact, right at Kaicho News here, we would have had at least two Venezuelans working with us, three in fact. One of them you could hear from time to time speaking Spanish. It's weird for a number of persons, but it is. They have been coming over here, and so we have a very warm relationship. And I would have rather that we have a different direction with Venezuela, but the reality is that this thing is not going to go away. I agree with the coalition stance that it's a monkey on our backs and we need to get rid of it, and let us settle it once and for all. We want to exploit all our resources. Venezuela has been allowing that claim on the entire Essequibo almost to be hanging over our heads for years, and we need to finish with this issue. So I think all Guyana is united on this border issue, border controversy. It's being called. It's not a dispute. We're not disputing. We own that border according to what our government is saying, what the stance of Guyana is. It's a controversy because Venezuela is claiming, and we want to settle this matter. So that's where it's at. We are going to... Do we have an idea, Yog, when there's going to be probably a ruling by the court on whether it has jurisdiction or not?
No, we don't. We don't as yet. I'm sure that we will probably be given that information very soon. But I just want to, if you don't mind, let me just say this, that the matter needs to be resolved.
Yes.
And it needs to be resolved in a permanent way. In other words, whatever the international court is going to decide needs to be decided with such long language that it puts this to a permanent rest. We cannot have this ongoing. I want to remind everyone that this thing dates back to 1899. It's so long ago. It raised its head during just when Guyana was petitioning for independence, when Venezuela said, that arbitration, we want to throw it aside, and we still think we know. But people must remember, as argued by Sir Sridat and his team today, that Guyana, the British Guyana, or the decision of the arbitration then, Leonard, they had given up quite a huge piece, in the settlement. They had given up quite a huge piece. And Venezuela, actually, the guy who represented Venezuela, he wrote home saying that he was delighted, and he's saying Venezuela will be delighted to know that the entire Orinduque area was awarded to us. They went away with a win. But later on, because of geopolitics and, of course, the economics of the Essequibo region, the potential, then they would have reneged on that. But certainly this has to be a permanent decision.
Yes, and I did see Pat Dial, I think it is, had a very good piece in Sunday's Kaichur News with regards to the history of that arbitral award that we would have had, and he went through it. And did you know that the U.S. had sided with Venezuela over that entire territory? So it was Guyana and Britain versus Venezuela and the U.S. It was an interesting piece, and if you missed it, you should get a copy of it, or go online and get it. Kaichur News, Pat, they are the Consumers Corner on that entire issue, how it all evolved from where it was about over 100 years ago to where it's at now, standing at the court. So if there's one thing that our politicians or people could agree with at this point in time, let's settle this matter with the Venezuela border in a very quickly manner, so we could exploit our goal. We want to put maybe a hydro power in the Mazaruni. We remember years back they had tried it, and then Venezuela had objected, and so the investors would have abandoned it. So these are things we don't want. We don't want any kind of objections to that. To where it's at now, standing at the court. So if there's one. Apologies here. So, in a few moments, Yog, we are going to prepare for this evening, room 592. We would have also spoken about the voucher, with regards to the voucher issue. Yog and I are going to do some research on it. We're going to put some reporters on it to see what we could get out. What exactly is this voucher system? How many people are benefiting? To what amounts? Where could you go shop at the voucher? And so we could bring it back and tell you if you want to benefit and where you got to apply for that. So thank you very much for raising that, people. I think there's a text from Linden Yog. You would have raised the issue there about communities sending back money, NDCs and so on. There's one person who says Linden is one that used to send back the money. I'm watching you from Linden. Thank you very much, the lady that's watching us from Linden, and all the people down in Linden. We have deep love for you guys. It's a beautiful area. The Blue Lakes are there. So many things, and you see the majestic bauxite plants, and of course the people, very warm people up in Linden. And there's that nice river that is there that you could watch the bauxite ships and so pass by. I guess if you've never been there and never seen it, then you don't have an understanding of what it's all about. Yes, Joe, over to you quickly.
Yes, Leonard. So thank you for that. And also I would like to alert everyone that if persons come home by you asking for donations and asking for you to sign any sheets of paper, be very, very careful. Do not allow people to come into your home or into your yard if you do not know them, if they cannot properly identify themselves. And if anybody says they come from, we have had advisory from the water company and the power company. If you have problems identifying people, you should call the companies that they say they represent and ensure that they are properly authorized. Don't invite persons to come into your properties without it. And Leonard, during today, we talk about sharing out hampers and food, and let me just repeat, if I may. Kumar Singh and Ravi Singh from Canada, Sister Jean, Pastor Jean, in fact, as well as Sister Pam Singh from St. Kitts, from Antigua, sorry, and many persons who have Guyanese at heart. The reason I'm saying this, Leonard, is that by and large, regardless of where our Guyanese brothers and sisters live outside of this country, they all care very much for the well-being of everyone in this country. And people who have been donating, they don't care who you give it to. They're not telling you give it to only their families and friends. They're telling you give it to whoever is in need. And I think that speaks to what we know as the Guyanese humility and the Guyanese hospitality, caring for one another. And we got to get back to that stage if only we can have politicians that can care for the people as we care for ourselves as a people. So, Leonard, on that note, I'd just like to quickly mention to everyone that we have to think seriously how we approach this increased taxes that seems to be the new order of the day. Rates and taxes of the city has increased 10%. They have sneaked it up on us. There is no warning. There is nothing that I've seen. If there is, then I'd want to be so educated. But They have sneaked up a 10% rates increase for all properties, commercial and residential in the city. 10%, but effective from 2017. They have slapped it back at you for 5 years. And so that has to be one of the biggest things that we have to insist, because Leonard, one has to question, if the entire Georgetown decide we're not going to pay any, what happens then? If the entire country decided, with any of these things, we have to really take a hard look at how we're going to comply, what happens then? People have a voice, people have an option, and people have to start realizing that the power does not reside in the office holder's hands, it resides in the hands of the people.
Absolutely, the Yog. There's a breaking thing here just before we close off. The Ministry of the Presidency has announced that tomorrow it will present, President David Granger will tomorrow present Colonel Godfrey Bess with the instrument appointing him the acting chief of staff of the Guyana Defense Force. So he's going to be the acting chief. That's his Colonel Godfrey Bess. The promotion and presentation instrument will begin at 10 o'clock. And I think they are going to invite some media people here. So that's going to be interesting to be hearing.
Well, you are not going to be invited, right?
I think you jump in the gun a little. I think you cast aspersions as to my character, which is not a very good thing at the moment. But I want to say thank you very much to everybody who have joined us today. As usual, it's been a very warm time for us, Yog. And although I must say this very quickly in closing, although we are in some stressful times with the elections and the COVID-19, it is a joy for me to be here every day like yourself, to be interacting with the people of Guyana, interacting with the people overseas, and they've been joining us from all over, from Brazil, from Norway, Canada, US, Europe, Caribbean, all across Guyana. I want to say thank you very much for joining, for being with us, for keeping us company. We don't have all the solutions, but Yog and I are talking about it. We're trying to bring it to you. So we're going to be back with you tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. sharp. We're going to bring you live coverage of the CCJ case that's before the court. And of course, we're going to be back with you at 7:30 p.m. sharp this evening in room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo and myself and Kit Nascimento. Thank you very much, Yog, and a good afternoon to the rest of the folks. And from all of us here at Kaicho Radio, do have a pleasant rest of the afternoon.
COVID-19 tips sponsored by Dex Soap. 1. Practice social distancing. 2. Wear your mask when leaving the house. 3. Wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds using our Dex Soap. 4. Cover your nose and mouth with a disposable tissue or flex elbow when you cough or sneeze. Choose Dex Soap for that extra cleanliness. Dex Soap is affordable and available nationwide.
Kite